Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Deep Focus Show. I'm Aiden,
I'm Clay.
Max.
and Tavi will join us at the end with his thoughts. I'm sorry about we've had two episodes in a row now where we have a little bit of an issue there, but it's okay. We thank you for sticking with us, and today we're going to be talking about Alfred Hitchcock's 1954 film Rear Window, one of two films he released that year. And we already talked about the other one, Dial M for Murder, which makes this the third episode of our series deep diving Hollywood cinema of the 1950s. If you guys had any kind of initial thoughts you wanted to say before we get into our larger reviews, go ahead.
Um, I've heard about this movie. I had a chance to go see this movie in theaters for the first time, but Licorice Pizza was playing at the same time that year, and that movie was basically going to be out of the cinemas by like the next day, so I decided to go see that movie instead. I know Aiden is disappointed in that, but
For multiple reasons, yes.
Yeah. I've seen this movie a bunch of times. This is one that my dad showed to me when I was pretty young. He always tried to expand my brain about movies and stuff and show me good stuff. And a lot of the time when I was like really young, I'd be playing like, Wario on my Game Boy Advance, and he would be like playing like Rashomon on the TV or something. I'd be like, "Fuck you, Dad," but I was actually like cognizant of some of them, and there were some that I really enjoyed, and this was one of them. And I've returned to this movie a lot. It's well, we'll get to that. But
I can
it's
go first, actually, if that's okay with y'all.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the film now. My review is very plot heavy. So the film stars James Stewart, who plays L.B. Jeffries. He's in a cast. Thelma Ritter plays Stella, she's a nurse that looks after Jeffries. She encourages Jeffrey not to be a peeping Tom because Jeffries is really bored in his house and he likes to watch people outside of his apartment. And he witnesses lots of people going about their day outside of the window, including people sunbathing or combating this massive heat wave. One couple is even sleeping on their balcony, and it's really interesting to see this whole ecosystem of people. And of course, the production design is fantastic. Um, just I don't know where they decided to film on that location, but it's really cool to see. Grace Kelly is here again. She was in Dial M for Murder, and she's back. She plays Jeffrey's wealthy girlfriend, Lisa Fremont. She wears gorgeous dresses and is very pretty. Come to think about it, they're kind of both a beautiful couple because Jeffries is quite handsome and charming as well. Um, but the level of detail, like I said, in front of the window is great. You just see people going about their day. Some of the people outside the window are quite strange. Like there's this one girl, I forget what they call her, just like some lonely heart girl. She's preparing wine and pretending to have a date with someone who clearly isn't there. That was pretty funny. Um, and then the crux of the film, Jeffrey sees Lars Thorwald, played by Raymond Burr. He's convinced that this guy murdered his wife, and he becomes obsessively transfixed on watching him. He tells his girlfriend, who is dismissive at first, but then she becomes convinced. And he also tells his friend, who is a detective, Tom Doyle, played by Wendell Corey. I love Corey here. He's resistant to this theory at first, but you can tell that him and Jeffries are pretty close. And the fact that he kind of tries to help at first is a good sign. I love the visual flourishes in this movie, like whenever Jeffries is looking through the camera lens and it's just a circular frame. It's really cool. Jeffries calls Doyle's wife and says, looks like Thorwald's is up to no good. And he's like, don't worry, Thorwald's a man. So there's some comedy thrown in there. Grace Kelly tells Jeffries that a woman wouldn't leave their purse around, including Mrs. Thorwald. And eventually the detective convinces them that there's no murder until bang, a scream is heard and a dog is dead. And I love Grace Kelly's reaction to that. Did the dog know too much? Girl, it is a dog, but she has a point. Because this dog is like going into the garden, and the dog sadly passes away. Animals were abused in this film. And it gets really tense in the climax of the film whenever Lisa breaks into Thorwald's room, and all hell breaks loose. I love the scene where the killer is inching up on Jeffries, and he's taking camera photos of him. The movie kind of ends a little bit abruptly, but my God, this movie is very original for its time. I'm sure at the time this was a game changer for thrillers, and of course, this concept has been replicated many times. I know there's a one Netflix movie called Women in the Window, which is quite honestly terrible. That's also about this lady. She's an agoraphobic and witnesses a murder. And then of course there's that movie Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf, which is a little bit better, but you can tell that influence is there. And apparently Taylor Swift wore the same dress as Grace Kelly in her music video for Me. So, but anyways, this is 5 stars. I really love it. And that is the plot by plot review. I have nothing else to say about it. But it's 10 out of 10. Like, I bet this was a game changer, like I said.
All right. Well, I'll go next. All right. So there are, I think, some similarities between this movie and Dial M. I mean, them both coming out the same year. There are a lot of similar. I said in that Dial M review that it all takes place in one room. That was wrong because I'm an idiot. Because there is that one part where the husband is like at the party, and he calls to make sure the murder happened and blah blah blah. So that doesn't take place in the apartment, but everything else does. This movie, though, I'm pretty sure this is essentially a one-room movie, and I think it's even more effective here, because here it's tied more into the storytelling. It's like a really intrinsic part of the film. I mean, it's like kind of like it's interesting to see his take on voyeurism, because I think some people, hold that against Hitchcock, that he's like a very voyeuristic filmmaker, particularly about women. He can get a little weird about women. And in this, he's talking about voyeurism as he's not talking about it as a positive thing. There's like a moral ambiguity to James Stewart's character, which is kind of similar to his character in Vertigo, where he's like a nice, he's the hero ostensibly, but he's like not the nicest guy. He has some messed up elements to his character, and in this it's that he's invading all these people's privacy with the camera, which is, it's a weird and creepy thing to do, but at the same time his voyeurism does end up saving the day and exposing this murderer. So it's almost like Hitchcock is saying, like, yeah, looking at the world this way is uncomfortable and invasive and weird, but it also could be helpful. It could even be necessary, so that's kind of neat. Cast wise, Jimmy Stewart, Hitchcock always knew how to use Jimmy Stewart really well. He's great. Grace Kelly's part is so different than her part in Dial M, and it's a really interesting role, because I don't know because I wasn't there at the time, but I assume, with like really successful, pretty actresses like that, a lot of people see the surface level and they see how glamorous and beautiful they are. And, maybe sometimes they question, like, oh, how good are they at their job? Is it all a surface level thing? And I think, there's some of that built into the character, where she looks a certain way and dresses a certain way and has a certain amount of money, but there's like, a depth to her and her character that, isn't immediately apparent to people, that's beneath the surface, that has, a lot of value, makes her a cool person. Thelma Ritter. I mean, Thelma Ritter is great. I mean, the year before this, she was in this movie Pickup on South Street. She got an Oscar nomination for a communist paranoia movie by Sam Fuller. If you get a chance, that's like one of my favorite movies. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, she's always great. She's like really sardonic, but like likable too. You know, she does a good balance there. And then Raymond Burr is really creepy. And you have that final sequence, which I won't get into if, you know, you haven't seen the movie, but, you know, I have seen that reference tons of times. There was a movie called You're Next, which was actually like a pretty cool little horror movie, but it had a sequence in there where I was like, that's straight out of Rear Window. And also, you know, there's that Simpsons episode where they think Flanders murdered his wife, which is pretty straight up Rear Window parody.
I've seen Your Next. It's an interesting film.
Yeah, no, like the first time you watch it, you think it's the straight horror film, and it's kind of weird tonally, and then the second time you watch it, you're like, oh, this is a comedy, and then it's fine. You know, it's kind of neat that way. But yeah, for me, I mean, I think this is just a wonderful movie. It's wonderfully directed, wonderfully acted. The script is great. I don't think Hitchcock should have won Best Director that year because Elia Kazan won for On the Waterfront. It's hard to argue with that. But I would say for me, this is probably almost definitely a top 10 Hitchcock movie, and easily a 5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like, bury the lead. I'm gonna go a 5 as well. So there's not that much I can say that you guys haven't already said in the sense that this film is just an example of just Hitchcock at his best, like for the criticisms that Hitchcock gets about his films prioritizing this kind of like sensationalism and entertainment value, it's like those are such bad criticisms because they make all of his films timeless because you can watch these at any time and they have the level of enjoyment. They haven't aged and they haven't kind of dated themselves with the style of filmmaking as some films have, not all, but some. Whereas this is actually truly timeless in the sense of it has the ingenious high concept, this, observing the neighborhood, which I think was a studio lot, not a location, but I might be wrong about that. Observing this, from your window and seeing all the things that happen through there, and that being the hook of the film. And that's really just brilliant writing because that's what a great film needs. It needs that punchy hook that gets you in immediately. You immediately get what the film's about, what it's trying to do, what's going on, and then it executes that, which is the best compliment for this kind of high concept thriller. And then obviously the acting's good. I mean, this is kind of a foregone conclusion when it's a film like this, So, I mean, it has the element of, Jimmy Stewart, his character in Hitchcock films, he tends to be more kind of morally gray and a bit more dark and neurotic than a lot of his roles in movies like, I don't know, It's a Wonderful Life or Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where he plays, the button-up all-American do-gooder. This is very different. And obviously it works, and it's a great film for that reason, as well as for the reason of the great filmmaking and how it executes this brilliant concept. So yeah, definitely a 5-star movie. And yeah.
I do want to add that there's so much detail in this film. Like I love whenever Grace Kelly and Jimmy Stewart are having a conversation and the background is out of frame, but you can still see like people going about their day in the other rooms and stuff. And
yeah, it's brilliantly blocked, because the whole movie is about like the depth of frame because there's always something going on in the apartment where you are, and there's always something going on far in the background on the opposite side where the other apartments are. So there's so much like kind of brilliant, clever blocking that goes into a movie like this because everything has to kind of make spatial sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is similar to Dial M in that, there are these, I think they call them chamber pieces if we want to be pretentious, like these films that all take place in one room. But this is like so the opposite of Dial M, and that Dial M, it like simplifies the narrative, and in this it like complicated the process so much, and it's just, this film is like a great technical feat, you know, and a great storytelling feat and a great technical feat. And what's cool about it is it doesn't really draw attention to itself in that way as like a technical accomplishment. It's just everything Hitchcock does just serves the story and makes it seamless and makes it like really immersive. And that's very neat.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's, you know, a masterpiece of being immersed in a film, you know, in that way. And that's, you know, something really spectacular. Good movie. Thank you for watching.